Hiya folks, it's Kikoskia here and welcome back to Writing and Me. This video contains no gameplay or music whatsoever, allowing you to focus on whatever it is you're up to, whether it's working, playing games, editing your own writing, or trying to figure out a puzzle involving palm trees at 8. Walk around the trees in a figure of 8 to open Medusa's cave. That's how you do it! I've just saved you years of racking your brain, or these days just going online and figuring out the solution. With that out of the way, let's talk about today's topic, which is going to be something a little bit different. I'm not going to be giving you any advice for any particular aspect of writing itself. Instead, I'm going to be talking about common misconceptions around writing and other creative pursuits. While these things have been around for thousands of years, there are still many people who don't quite get the whole process of creating something and then selling it for a living. And in this video, I hope to talk about many of these misconceptions and dispel them, starting with the one that you're most likely to encounter if you meet someone for the first time. Eventually, the question of what do you do for a living will crop up. And if your answer is, oh, I write books, or I draw art, they may look at you incredulously and go, yeah, but what's your real job? And that is when the penny drops that you've encountered the first major misconception, which is that creative pursuits are not a real job. They are. They most certainly are, and they are a lot of hard work. Some people think that people that write books or draw just stay indoors all day, in their pajamas, in bed, eating chocolate and watching television, and then maybe for half an hour before dinner time they will get up and write a bit or paint, and then it's done. And I'm here to inform you that that is not how that works whatsoever. Such things are both time-consuming and exceptionally difficult. But Kiko, I hear you say, you've said before that writing is a joy that you absolutely love, and that you should go at whatever pace you desire. That is very true, but there is a big difference between creative pursuits in your own time, for leisure, and doing so on a deadline. If you've been given a deadline from, say, an editor or a client, suddenly there is that pressure, that stress, the knowledge that you have to do this in a time frame when the creative flow does not heed such things. I've mentioned how sometimes you will spend absolutely ages sat in front of the computer screen, wanting to write, knowing what you want to write, but the words just are not coming. You have that writer's block, or you're just still trying to grapple in your mind as to how you're going to convey what you want to put down into words. Imagine that, but you have to be finished in 3 days. And as each hour ticks by and you've made very little progress, if any, that deadline looms ever closer. And that deadline is the difference between you having money and not having money. Suddenly, there's a lot more at stake, and that pressure and stress will get to you. That lingering sense that you only have so long, and the worry with that is that you will compromise what you're writing in an effort to try and get it done sooner. And all of this stuff is playing in your head while you're doing all the writing, which itself, as I've said, is physically and mentally exhausting. And you've also got everything else that you have to juggle as a part of day-to-day living. And then somebody turns around and says to you that it's not a real job. Some people really take offense to that. I don't, personally, because when people ask me what I do, I say that I create Let's Plays, and I have to explain that, and I have had a few people incredulously say, well, when are you going to get a real job? And then my response has always been, well, whenever every single person on the planet stops consuming creative media. They look at me confused and go, what? And it's like, well, when everybody stops reading books, appreciating art, listening to music, watching films, and everything else that people work really hard to create, when everyone stops doing that forever, then I will stop doing what I'm doing. Usually that quietens them. But that is only one misconception, though it is a major one. The second misconception usually follows immediately after I say that I'm writing a story. Quite often people will ask if it's published, and then I will say no. But there are some people that go, are you going to be the next J.K. Rowling? Or are you going to be the next Stephen King? Or are you a New York Times bestseller? Or has your book been turned into a movie yet? The answer to all those questions is no. And most people who end up writing or pursuing any creative pursuit do not reach that level of success. That level of success is very rare. Very few people become that fantastically well-known and successful and rich from doing what they're doing. Many people, through no fault of their own, never reach anywhere near that level of success. And the level of success is not related to how good the thing you're creating is, and that is the misconception that I'm trying to get across here. Lots of people associate how good your thing is with how successful it is. There are thousands upon thousands of fantastic authors and gifted artists and people that make brilliant music, and they, through no fault of their own, will likely never get the success and fame they deserve. Why? Because succeeding in creative pursuits is as much about luck as it is about talent. Being in the right place at the right time, having the right people see the right thing, and realize that you have the ability to go further and the ability to be successful. This applies as well for people who self-publicize. They need the right people to see the right thing, and that is all about luck. And quite often, you just don't have that luck. Do not think that just because somebody isn't a New York Times bestseller and their book isn't on every shelf of every bookstore in the world, that they are not good at what they do. That is not how you should grade success. How you should grade success is what the individual person who creates this classes as success. For many of them, just creating the thing is a monumental achievement because it takes so much work and so much time and so much of an outpouring of themselves. People who create things put so much of themselves into what they create, and they look at a blank sheet of paper or a blank canvas, and from their minds and their hands, they create wonderful, amazing things that didn't exist before they started working on it. And that is a huge accomplishment. Creating something from nothing is fantastic, and that in itself is a success. I certainly class it as a success. If other people are able to appreciate it, that's even better. And if you can make a living off this, that is a wondrous achievement. Many people who pursue creative pursuits are not wealthy. I am certainly not wealthy. I am treading water. And I've been treading water for quite a long time. But I am very happy, and I would say that my YouTube channel, which is a creative pursuit, is a success. I would love it to be a much bigger success, but it is a success. And yet there will be people out there who will look at the fact that I have 53,000 subscribers and go, well, you're nowhere near as big as this person that has 5 million. Yes, you're absolutely right. I'm not as big as that person. Thank you for reminding me of that. Just like some people will look at the fact that I write and go, well, you know, about 1% of people are ever published. Thanks for the reminder. I'm well aware of the fact that I'm fighting against the odds here for anyone to ever see my writing ever. Which then leads to another misconception, which is that people will look at the fact that I'm not published and say, well, why don't you just self-publish? It's easy. And in a way, they are right. Self-publishing is a lot easier than it used to be with the advent of the internet and various places where you can self-publish for people to buy digital copies of your story to read. It's still not easy to do, however, because that implies that you've reached a point in your story where you are happy to put it online. And trust me, despite many years with my story, I have never been at a point where I've looked at it and gone, yes, this is fine, I'm gonna put it up for people to see, because I look at it and I never think it's good enough. Because I've been with this thing all this time, I have the knowledge of what it was before, and all the little things that I think may be wrong with it, even if there is nothing wrong with it, because I created it. I've been with it through the whole process, and you do an edit run, which leads to an edit run, followed by another edit run, followed by another edit run. When is a story ever finished? The answer is, quite bluntly, it's never truly finished, because the author will always end up finding something that they end up wanting to change, and it's a case of drawing a line and going, there's nothing more I should do, rather than, well, it's completely finished now and everything's absolutely perfect, because you want to bet that one thing one person will say if you do manage to get published is, oh, I found a typo on page 192. And my thought to that would be, you saw me, you know that I'm the author, you came up to me, and the first thing you said to me is, I found a typo on page 192. Boy, did you take a lot away from my writing. A typo? Yay! That makes me feel so much better. Not I really liked it, but I found a typo. Woo! No piece of work is ever perfect. No building that is built is ever perfect. No book is ever perfect. No piece of art is ever perfect. No film is perfect. Nothing in the entire universe is perfect. And yet, quite a few people will look at a creative work and expect perfection. They don't see the grueling and lengthy process that went into creating this thing. They don't see the countless hours, they don't see the lost sleep, they don't see the days of racking your mind trying to see how to move forward with this. They don't see the writer's block, they don't see anything but the finished product. And they will pick apart that finished product, looking for any mistake that they can pick at. I have plenty of experience of that with my videos. Nothing is perfect. Everything is flawed. Every person is flawed. It is what makes us who we are, what makes us unique, and what makes the whole world, the whole universe, a wondrously beautiful thing. That everything is off. That everything is imperfect. And that is something that should be celebrated rather than nitpicked at. Going back, however, to the publishing thing, because my did I get sidetracked from that. Remember when I said a long time ago that I'd end up getting sidetracked from things? I think it was the first video of this. Oh yeah, it happens quite a lot. But anyway, getting published through an actual publishing house is, as I very quickly discovered once I started trying to submit my story to them last year, is a very difficult process. For a start, if you're unsolicited, as in you don't have an agent, most publishing houses don't want to hear from you at all. They don't want to hear about it, so that will limit your options significantly unless you have an agent. A lot of publishing houses will have specific genres that they work in, which makes sense. But they also have specific windows that they accept submissions. Publishing houses typically do not accept things all year round. They have a 2, or maybe if you're lucky, 3-month window in a year where they will accept submissions. Beyond that, they're closed to submissions and you have to look elsewhere. And even if you do find one that you can submit your work to, each one has a different way of having that submission go through. One of them wanted me to send the first 3 chapters. Other ones just want a brief synopsis. Some of them don't want a brief synopsis of the story at all when they look at a piece of your work. And all of them usually do not respond to you if they don't want your work. Which is understandable considering how busy they are, but that leaves you in the dark. And I don't know, and to this day I don't know if any of the people that I've sent my stuff to even looked at what I sent in. For all I know, it was just buried in a bunch of emails or packages and forgotten about. I don't know if they liked it, if they didn't like it, or if they never saw it. And likely I never will, because I sent emails, which they encourage you to do to follow up on submissions, and didn't get a response to them either. And for those that are thinking I've only looked at a few publishing houses, oh no, I've looked at hundreds. Hundreds globally. And I've been able to submit my story to about 10, and none of them got back to me. So when people say that publishing is easy, no, it is not. Once you get your foot in the door, it is a different story. Once you are a known quantity, and once you are published and there is a definite audience for your work, then it is a lot easier to get the next story published, which by the way leads to a small segue, which is that quite a lot of times people will look at a series of stories and they'll see that it is unfinished, and they'll go, oh, it's not finished yet, I don't want to buy any of these. And by doing that, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy that pretty much ensures that the series will not be finished, because, of course, the publishing houses look for the sales in the previous entries in an unfinished series to determine whether they should continue with that series. It's one of the things they look for. And if you don't buy those entries that are already out, it really hurts the chances of the author being able to finish that story with that publishing house, because the sales won't be good. So if you want to support a series and see more of it, buy the entries that are already out. It seems self-explanatory, and yet it is something that is so often missed. But either way, there is one more misconception that I want to talk about, and that is that all creative people are deeply tragic individuals. Quite a lot of people think that to be a good musician, or a good artist, or a good author, you need to be pained, troubled. It needs to be a struggle. It needs to be an anguish. It needs to be a labor of pain to create stuff. And let me tell you, I'm quite happy creating stuff without any of that there. Despite the fact that I do, of course, have things like my crippling lack of self-esteem and things like that do always play in the back of my head, but I'd much rather write without that there, trust me. There are people who have problems, and based on these false opinions will not go and get them treated because they think that they need these things going wrong to have their talent. That if they go and get this treated, they will lose their ability to create, and that is terrible. I don't want to think that people are letting themselves suffer based on the false pretense that without their suffering, they won't have the ability to create. You shouldn't have to suffer for the ability to create. If there's something wrong, go and get it looked at. Go and get it treated. Please. Your writing, your art, your music, whatever you do, your writing, your art, your music, everything will benefit from you being better. So don't listen to people when they say that you need to be a tortured soul. You don't. You definitely don't. You need to look out for yourself, and when you do, your creativity will thank you. And with that, I think I've gone over some of the major misconceptions that I want to touch upon. There are surely a lot more out there, and if I do ever get my story published, I'm very sure that there'll be some people who will ask for a free copy. And for them, I've got some bad news. Most of the time, not even the author gets a free copy of their work, and when they do, they get just a handful of them. If you want to read my story, I recommend buying it. It's a good way to guarantee that you get a copy, and it'll help me out. And so, when we come back, folks, we'll talk about some writing. More writing and me. This time, about a topic concerning the writing process. Unless, of course, people have other things related to creative pursuits in general that people want me to talk about. If you do, feel free to let me know about them in the comments. But until then, I'll catch you next time, folks, and I'll see you then. Later.